people were lying in the room with their heads toward the center, creating a kind of a star, and actually connected with their hands. And we asked them to breathe faster, and we were playing the music. And there was usually somebody who was very close to what we call the process. And they started regressing and started going into a powerful experience. We started working using this kind of body work with those people. It turned out to be very contagious. That some people just watching somebody, for example, going through birth, they started going into process themselves. So we had situations where there could be 3 people in process simultaneously. Yeah, I would be working with one, Christina with another, and then the rest of the group was supporting, that person who was waiting for us to work. And sometimes we spent the whole afternoon. It was like a chain reaction. There was one day I was working in the garden. We had a beautiful garden on the ocean, and I threw off my back. It was a really agonizing pain. And we had a workshop, 46 people coming to Esalen, basically from all over the world, from Australia, South America, Europe, you name it. This is what Esalen is like. It's a mecca, where people come from all over the world. And so there was no way of sending these people home. Say, sorry, folks, there's no workshop. And on the other hand, I couldn't imagine coming close to anybody doing any body work because, even when I was still, it was hurting. So we were thinking, what are we going to do? And so we decided, well, why don't we pair them up and let them work with each other? And we're just going to be giving them instructions. And that session was such a success that we never did it differently. And the reason for that was that now it was not 1, 2, 3 people, but it was half of the group was having powerful experiences. Then since that time we just run the sessions in such a way that people pair up and we work with half of the group. Half of the group are sitters, and then they switch. And then we also have a sharing where people talk, which is kind of a left brain report about the experience. We also ask people to do paid mandalas, which is like a sort of right brain complement. And people would put the mandalas in such a way that you see the mandalas of one person creating a column. So you can see with one look, you can see what happened. So that we do it also in the training. We ask people to keep the mandalas for the whole time and then give space and time to people where they can lay out the mandalas and they say, this is where I was when I began and this is where I am now, and these are some of the most important things that happened.
What is your current overview of the map of consciousness?
When I was an adolescent and post-adolescent, I never imagined being a psychiatrist. My primary interest was in art. I got very, very deeply into Wagner. I got sort of excited about Wagner. I was painting, drawing, and I wanted to go into animated movies. Somebody gave me Freud introductory lectures. I read it, and just overnight I decided, this is what I really want to do. So I joined a group of psychoanalysts in Prague, and later I had 7 years of personal, training. Initially, I was still excited about the theory, the Freudian theory, but what bothered me was the practice. That the very narrow indication range. You have to meet very special criteria to be considered a good candidate for psychoanalysis. So I got into a kind of an existential crisis where I think this was really a bad choice. I should have stayed with the animated movies. Then something happened in my life that just really sent me in a completely different direction. One day the department where I was working got a big box full of ampules, and it said, "This is LSD 25, the incredibly powerful psychoactive effects of the substance were discovered by Dr. Hoffman, who actually accidentally intoxicated himself. We believe that this substance, in minuscule dosages, can create some state that is very similar to what happens to psychotic patients." And would you want to work with the substance, and let us know if you find any legitimate use for it. The excitement was about the fact that this substance was active in such infinitesimal quantities, micrograms, millions of a gram. And so it was conceivable that the body, the human body, can produce a substance like that, and psychosis, schizophrenia would not really be mental diseases, they would be aberrations of body chemistry. And if we can identify that substance, the culprit, we can also find another substance that would neutralize it, and you would have a kind of test tube solution for schizophrenia and other psychosis. It would be kind of holy grail of psychiatry. We also feel that this substance could be used as an unconventional training tool for psychiatrists, psychologists, nurses, students, because it would give them a chance to spend several hours in the world that would be like the world of their patients. So I became one of the early volunteers, and I had just this experience that really changed my life. My preceptor who got the drug was interested in electroencephalography, and he was also interested at that time in what's called driving or entraining the brain waves, which means exposing people to a powerful stroboscopic light of different frequencies, and then finding out if you can create certain wave pattern in the brain by feeding certain frequencies. What happened specifically was between the third and the fourth hour, when my experience was peaking, culminating, this research assistant came and she said it was time to drive the brain waves. And she took me to a little room. I lay down, she pasted the electrodes on my head, and then put this gigantic stroboscope above my head and turned this thing on. And in the next moment there was light like I had never seen in my life. At the time I couldn't even imagine existed. My first thought was, this is what it must have been like in Hiroshima when the thing went off. And my consciousness was just catapulted out of my body. I lost the research assistant and clinic and Prague and the planet, and I had the feeling my consciousness had no more boundaries. I became sort of all there was, all of existence. So today I think it was more like the Dharmakaya from the Tibetan Book of the Dead than the bomb in Hiroshima. Later I sort of was in the physical universe. I actually had somehow the feeling that I was the physical universe, and there were things happening for which I didn't even have names at the time. I had the feeling I was at the beginning of the universe, like the Big Bang. There were black holes, white holes. And then she went very carefully through the protocol and then turned it off, and my consciousness started shrinking again. And then for quite a while I was just floating around. My consciousness was floating around my body. I couldn't imagine how to get those two together. And at that point it became just obvious to me that what they taught me at the university, that the brain matter can somehow generate consciousness, was just nonsense. This was not true. I suddenly understood how consciousness could create the virtual reality of the material world, because ultimately how we perceive this world is through experiences. We shouldn't even talk about the fact that science describes the world. Astronomy is not the science about the stars. It's about our experiences of what we call stars. I joined a group of people who had access, actually, in Prague to mescalina, psilocibina, LSD, also the tryptamine derivatives that were developed in Budapest by Stephen Zara. And we were trying to find out if these substances create pretty much the same kind of a picture, or if there's something specific for each of those substances. And then we brought psychiatric patients diagnosed as psychotic, and we wanted to know if the values of the people who took psychedelics would converge now with the values of these patients. Then came to that part that was really important for developing this new cartography, when I realized the tremendous inter-individual, intra-individual variability of these experiences. Everybody would have a different session. And if we repeated that, let's say repeated sessions with LSD of the same person, each session was different. So I realized this was not pharmacology. Actually, pharmacology couldn't exist if substances would be this unpredictable. Like you give a substance and, anything can happen, but nothing has to happen. And so I realized we were working with a catalyst. We were working with a substance that kind of raised the energetic niveau, so that now contents of the deep psyche that normally are not available are emerging into consciousness. So we are having experiences of ourselves. We are not having LSD experiences.